Ladies and gentlemen, NSBA now brings you our feature presentation.
I remember making a deal. Made lots of deals. I ride my bike to work in the summertime when the weather is reasonable. I like doing it. I like the smell of the fresh air, and it's just a nice way to go. You feel pretty free on a bike. 43 years ago now, my wife bought me a Samsonite brown briefcase for Christmas. When I put it on my bike, I can have it on within 10 seconds. I know exactly how I'm mounting it, etc. I think I've only lost it once, so why replace it? It's doing its job.
It's another part of the Grand West Way. So if he's booking to this date a hotel or a plane, or it doesn't matter. Does he necessarily need to save $5? No, but it's still the principle, and he still carries that with him. Part of his nature, part of his character.
If I could even bottle that and sell that, and it's just the way, I don't know, he was created. He's always looking at what's the next thing I need to get done, and he doesn't let things stand in his way.
Yeah, intense. Dad is very intense. And anything he does it 100% and he does it well. There's nothing like half-assed about him.
He's never on time for anything. Now I understand why, because he's always negotiating.
That's his legacy. The man, the negotiator.
Who am I? I'm a farm boy from the Higg area and grew up in that area. When I was 12 years old, my parents, they decided to build a brand new farm. After the home was built, my parents decided to buy a new car. It was a Mercury, or a Meteor, I guess, that was built in Oakville, Ontario. So the plan was to take the train, the family would go down, pick up the car, and we would drive back. And then I hear my dad, he's hiring my uncle to do the chores of the livestock we had. We had cows, we had chickens, and so they need to be cared for, and typically twice a day is what you did. My father, he allowed us to use equipment, and I was working on the field. I was maybe 8 years old. We were given responsibility. I made my dad an offer. I said, how about I stay home and I'll do the chores and the farm work. And then I said, if you give me their pay that you would be paying anyway, maybe I could also have the money for the train ticket. I was incredibly blessed to have the parents that I did. There were 6 children, I'm the oldest, 5 boys and 1 girl, 5 rambunctious boys, by the way. My father, he had a way he could communicate. He was interested in people, and he had good advice. My mother, when I think of an angel, I think she's the closest person I know that comes to being an angel. They taught us honesty, they taught us hard work, they taught us discipline. And I said, and then the rest, the expenses that you would incur, meals and so forth, I said, you can pocket that. And I said, we'll both be happy. You'll save some money, and I'll make some income. And how about it? My dad agreed. Later, he said, you know, it was a family trip. You know, we don't do them all the time. It might have been good to have you. But as time went on further, I think he was proud of how things worked out. So I forfeited the trip because I could make some money. And I was 12. The company that I've spent most of my career with is Grand West. It was the original one that got me somewhere. And what it is, it's the automotive warehouse distribution center for automotive accessories. On a daily basis, we operate out of Saskatoon and out of Montreal, and we like to say we're national from the two warehouse operations. We prepared for growth. We say, well, we could use another 10,000 square feet. We build 20 or 30.
We're averaging roughly about 1,000 phone calls a day. One of our largest, busiest days ever was 2,572 phone calls. Daily we have 4 Pure Later semi-tractor units showing up here, loaded to the brim and out to the entire Western Canada region, delivering all of our products.
Then Ready Properties has evolved over time. Grand West needed an operation, and after a few moves, we bought our own property and developed it, and that has grown since then to be an entity on its own.
George owns currently 50 buildings, which include over 110 tenants. And remember, this is all cash. This is no mortgages, strictly cash deals. But George's legacy will always be, again, back to who he was, his character.
Hey George.
Yeah, hi.
How's it going? This is what I wanted to show you here.
Oh yeah.
So,
And day in and day out, he's showing us how to work ethic.
I finished grade 12. I wrote my last exam on a Friday. Monday morning, I was on the job. So I started at Smith Rolls. So they put me on a welder. And after a week or two, they noticed we're all building the same product. It was a cattle headgate. I think the company average was about 19 is what they were building, but I was building 26 a day. I got some of the co-workers telling me to slow down. It didn't look good on them. After 3 months, they asked me if I'd like to work in the purchasing department in the office. Well, that seemed very strange to me. So I'm on a job a week or two, and I know they're going to fire me. I don't know anything.
Smith Rolls loved him. They wanted to keep him. They didn't want to let him go or see him go because of his abilities.
I got into my element where I was in purchasing, and so I was making deals and negotiating things every day. And that's where I met Dale.
Well, we both worked at Smith Rolls, and we were both around the same age, and we just became good friends. I left that after a couple years, and then I thought, well, I should get together with that Reddekopp guy and see if he's interested in doing something.
We met at a bar and we had a beer, and I said, so what's your business idea? Well, he said nothing in particular, but he's wondering if I had any ideas.
They didn't know what type of business at that point. They didn't know really a whole lot, just that they wanted to be in business.
Well, I like Dale. He's a genuine fellow, smart and capable, and the more you get to know him, the better you like him. That's the way I see it.
My analytical abilities and George's outgoing personality, he felt that we would be a success. A salesman and an accountant.
So that was the start of Grand West. We called it Grand West because we didn't know exactly where this business would take us. We started looking at, could we manufacture something? Too much capital.
Well, he seemed like he was very good at, well, they call him the negotiator. He's very good at buying product.
So we decided we would import products or be a distributor and sell them to the market in some fashion. So the very first product that we came up with was fire extinguishers. Combines would go in the field. Once in a while, a bearing would seize, start a fire, burn up the combine, perhaps burn down the field. So there should be no combine out there without at least some fire extinguishers. I remember we had an old truck. I went to the trucking company because they had no place to deliver it to, and I went and picked them up. So I have these 25 boxes, cartons of product, and it starts raining. So where do you go? Well, when it's raining, nobody goes to the car wash, but I did. So I went into the car wash and waited there until it quit raining. So that was the first warehouse for Grand West. We had started the business, and I still kept working at Smith Rolls.
And he's still young, and he's still trying to discover and figure out, okay, well, where do I go with this?
But my wife, who's not a risk taker, she was quite open. She had a lot more confidence in me than I did in myself. She said, no, you go ahead, you need to do it.
I think it was around that time that George felt that maybe he could leave Smith Rolls and we could make a go of it.
That was the hardest decision I've made in my life. To quit a job that I was feeling I was doing well, to go to something unknown.
Typically, any negotiation that George had gone into, we saw it quite often. There was a smile at the beginning, and there was a smile at the end when we knew that we would get what we wanted.
You hear some negotiators that they get mean and they get tough, right? Well, George was tough with a smile.
He loved it. He loved the challenge. He was always looking for a good deal, and he kind of got the name with all his friends, like the Negotiator and always the deal finder, and maybe a little bit on the thrifty side.
He was fine like sifting through all the bad deals in order to find the best deal.
So we started with fire extinguishers, we started with field sprayers, tractor louvers, but then it became fall. And fall was, okay, now what are we going to do? We can't sell to the farmers, we need something.
And I remember driving down the road and thinking, we need to do $30,000 a month to survive. How will we do it?
And we went down to Kansas to a farm show there, and that's where we picked up our first automotive products.
So we brought in 20 running boards. We started seeing some around on vehicles. So we brought in running boards for pickup trucks. They sold quite well. Did it again. And then we grew it.
And then pretty soon we're ordering like hundreds of pairs at a time. And it just blossomed. And that really got us going in the automotive industry. So we had this small warehouse in Sutherland. I guess, yeah, it became pretty crowded in there.
We went from 300,000 to 600,000 in sales. We were bringing them from Iowa in the US. And overnight, they raised their prices by a little over 10%. The exchange rate worked against us. In short order, our prices were 20% higher, and we had competition. Well, I remember my life flashing before my eyes. So I contacted the Canadian manufacturer and said, we'd like to buy their product. And they said, sorry, we have 2 distributors in Saskatoon already. And I said, well, how much business are they doing? Well, both of them are doing around 60,000 a year. I said, really? I said, well, we'll give you an order for 60,000 one shot. They sat up and took notice, and they agreed, yes, they would sell us. It was fairly bold for us to make that statement, but I knew also they couldn't ship 60,000 all at one time either.
Things just started to develop, and he wasn't going to lose at anything. He's going to find a way, and that's exactly what he did. He found a way, and it snowballed.
You know, it was just a small group of guys, a small team, working as hard as we could.
And you literally could not leave your desk. It was ringing nonstop all day. And you had to take every call, and it was all pen and paper. You never even had a chance to really sit down or sit back and take it all in.
Yeah, it was a little hectic at times, but it was fun because things were growing, we were adding people.
At that stage, when I started, I was in shipping and receiving. And that was kind of a challenge in that little building.
So we're shopping around, a very nice realtor took us around. I said, what about this property here? He said, yeah, it's a decent location, he said, but there are 3 owners and 2 aren't talking to the one. You know, it's hopeless.
The man just will refuse to lose.
He was in his office for like an hour on the phone, and you could tell he was using his negotiation skills.
I said, okay, now look, there is a way to fix this. I'll prove it to you. and you'll get fair compensation. Everybody will on all sides.
They both wanted to sell, but the one guy didn't want the other guy to get any money. It was, George is going back and forth between the two guys.
I said, do you want to do that? Or do you love misery? If you're in love with misery, just keep on. But I says, if you want to have a peaceful life and money, you should work with me.
And he come out of his office and he was hitting his fist and he was so excited and he's like, I got the deal.
We got it, guys. And so that meant to us in sales, okay, we got some stuff to sell.
You know, with George, he always had a creative way of making things work.
We had a supplier, dealt with them for decades, and they loved us because we were willing to stock up.
And I say, you better go into that boardroom and you better be a lawyer. You better have all your facts straight.
So I called him and he said, you know, my wife is mad at me because I was late getting home last night. Today I got to pick up the kids from school. All I have is 15 minutes, so what are we going to do?
He's very methodical, he's very thorough, and he is very patient.
Well, I told him what I felt we should do would be very reasonable and so forth. And I'm not saying yes, but there has to be something in it for us. And what's that going to be? He said, finally, he's exasperated because he doesn't want his wife mad at him again. He gave me too much information, so he buckled and did it my way.
And all in a very, conversational. I mean, he never got angry or no dramatics, nothing like that, but he's just persistent.
We've had conversations about, George, don't you think you're a little optimistic here? Can we be a little realistic about this?
I do remember some of the guys coming out of his office and you could tell that they were like, oh man, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that on time.
You have to have time on your side when you're making a decision.
I think, to me, he kept the cards close to his chest a lot of the time. He likes to fish.
I don't know of a time where I went into his office and didn't leave going, geez, he's right again.
There are times where you also have to learn to walk.
We would hear how George can negotiate. Whether the door's open or closed, it was usually open. You can hear a negotiation sometimes, and you learn from it.
When you're negotiating, you need to have patience, and sometimes things don't go at the speed you want, and you have to flex.
And that might take a few hours sometimes, because he's working pretty good, but it would benefit Grand West. But the vendor was always saying, you know what, this is good for us. George would convince him that it's good for them.
But he's a negotiator, there's no question. He's a negotiator, and once the deal is done, there's no going back on his word. He is 100%.
And then as we grew, Grand West needed some properties to operate out of. Buildings aren't like accordions that go in and out. They're finite. So within a year, I'm looking around and thinking, it might be nice to own the adjacent property. We'd have the whole block. And so I approached them, made a deal, and bought it.
So what are we looking at for space right now? What capacity are we at?
Space-wise now, the way we buy things is changing. It's too long, to get the shipments now and stuff. So now we're buying more, less often. So then we need more space because, we don't know when we're getting it, how it's coming. So now we're getting way more and we don't have room.
Well, we've never been a just-in-time company, but I appreciate what you're saying. We're bulking up more because of inconsistent supply. All this inventory you see here is paid for. And I'm happy to say in all our properties, all our buildings, all the inventory is paid for. What happens to the overstock?
We're hoping to make better use of our space so that it doesn't matter where our overstock is.
Every rack is labeled now from front to back.
Every rack has a barcode.
Yeah. An example is, okay, so if we got a full pallet of this here, right? And we still got a half pallet left. Instead of putting it over, here's an empty spot.
Right.
So overstock can be everywhere and product can be everywhere.
I think I understand here. We need more space, and really, it's a nice problem to have. We all have struggles. It's never you do something, it's just easy. Press this button, use this formula, and it all works well.
The 80s were one of the toughest decades, if not the toughest decade to support business. We're talking about 17, 18% interest rates. People were losing their houses left, right, and center.
We were looking at buying our competitor, who was also doing $600,000 a year. And so we needed financing for that. We didn't have a dime. Every dime we had was already being utilized.
And we took the proposal to the bank, and the bank said, no, we're not going to do it.
So we shopped all the banks. They all said no.
George, after the meeting, we were just walking back to our cars, and I said, so how's everything going, George, for real? And he's like, well, you know, for the last little bit, it's been a little tight, but you know, if we can hold on another 3 months, I think we're gonna make it.
My father, he suggested to me, he said, you know, maybe what you ought to do is close down your business and see if you can get your old job back. And I said, well, if I do, you know, if we liquidate, we'll lose money at it. He said, yeah, what of it? And I said, well, I feel like I need to give it a really good try. And if I go down with the sinking ship, then I'll do that first.
But our accountant, he thought that George and I were a good partnership. He went to the TD Bank and he said, give these guys a loan. And they did.
We were well ahead of schedule in making our payments. We had excellent growth, reasonable margins, and of course our overhead we kept very low. When you have 20% interest rates, you learn how to be efficient.
So we got the loan, we bought the company, bought out our competitor. 6 months later, we had the loan paid off.
I think what we've always done as a team is saying, okay, you know, there's going to be some times, guys, we got to pitch in extra. And then George, we realized if we're pitching in extra for like a year in a row, things have to change.
1990, 91, and Dale's like, you know what, I'm good, I'm out.
Oh, I just felt I wanted to travel and see some of the world, and we came to an agreement that I'd take a year off and sort of fulfill some of my dreams and see what happened after that year. And after the year when I came back, we sat down and I said, yeah, I think I'd like to sell out if we could come to an agreement on the price.
And Dave Haberman was the accountant looking after us. He looked at our financial statements and he said, now George, he said, you're not doing this by yourself. You know, you must have some other very good people. I said, absolutely we do. He said, make sure you take good care of them.
He presented his side of the argument for his price, and I presented mine, and there was a little bit of negotiating, but we came to a mutual agreement.
And that's how I feel. Yeah. Everything we've done is not me. It's been a team effort, and there are so many people, they have built Grand West. And I've been part of it.
He was always very firm growing up that all of us kids knew how to work a car, fix a car, get jobs done around the house, and also be handy outside. It didn't matter if you were male, female, Dad always wanted to make sure that we were good with our hands and helping out in the shop.
George has always instilled in all of his family that we got to get the chores done before we play.
Yes, I didn't want my kids to be city slickers, where all you did is sit in your rumpus room in the basement and watch TV, and the only time you got out was to go to 7-Eleven for a Slurpee.
The only problem with the Saturday jobs was that none of our friends wanted to come for sleepovers because they always got included in the Saturday jobs, and they'd always have to pitch in, and no matter what the job was, they were expected to help out.
It's not necessarily like fun, but I think it was, in past tense, looking back, we were having a great time.
So,
Dad, just take the burgers apart and then you guys can put them on the barbecue.
okay. Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Just make sure you get all the paper out. We learned a lot. We learned the value of $1 young. We learned how to use our hands, and we learned the value of working hard for whatever it is that you need done.
Let's go do some barbecuing.
All right. You can throw them on there, right?
So if business goes really bad, George can still get on at McDonald's. Flipping burgers.
Well, they like consistency. I'm not sure if we have that.
Look what I have for you.
First, you need a napkin. I have one here. Is that better? This one and this one too. Okay. Very clean hands. It's a Reddekopp trait, actually.
Just like your papa.
Even to this day, the grandchildren, when I see him with his grandchildren, it just makes you want to melt.
Dad's the best grandfather that you could ask for. He's really hands-on with the kids. He has that softer side, which is really nice to see. When you itch her back, she needs her back itched.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Very important.
Is that better?
Same.
A little more higher.
Dad, what did you do on May Long?
I went and I worked at the cottages.
Surprise, surprise.
I was the janitor and the hired hand.
Sounds like fun.
We have all learned the Grand West Way. The Grand West Way is George Reddekopp's way.
Good morning and welcome to a Wednesday morning meeting. Roger had to bring something to our attention. He was meeting on the phone with Rough Country, and I know we've talked about them in the past about maybe dealing with them. So what I'll do is I'll just turn it over to Roger, and he can kind of brief us on what he's talked about with Rough Country there.
Yeah, that'll be good. The meeting's a little later this morning than it usually is, but we hope to still have your full attention, except maybe Eugene, he'll have his morning nap.
And he also always wanted to be known as the person who was just another piece of the team.
A year ago, we offered them $1 million purchase order. They said, no, thank you. We have enough business in Canada. We have enough customers. 2 years later, they buy Ascendex flares. Part of that agreement to buy that is Russ said, well, we set up Grand West, and we've dealt with them before. They are the best distributor that we've ever dealt with, and I won't sell my company to you if you don't treat them properly.
Nice.
So that just goes to show, 10, 15, 20 years ago, what we were doing back then, and it's still paying dividends to now. So now we have a possible chance to move forward if we can make all the numbers look right.
He's really good at inspiring others, and with us and with his employees, we're expected to work hard, and you're expected to fill the job that you are supposed to do with no shortcuts.
When staff see that he's willing to get his hands dirty and that no job is too big or too little, that mentality pervades the culture. And I think Dad's anti-bureaucracy. So he's all about being able to try and empower his managers to make decisions and to trust them to avoid bureaucracy.
George is a very kind and encouraging man, and he's given me ample opportunity to show what I can do.
Tiger Automotive is an extension of Grand West. It is open to the public.
We don't sell necessity here. We sell fun. We sell stuff that's going to make people be happy about their truck, make it individual, make it not look like everybody else's truck out there.
And he had visions about the store, how Tiger Automotive would be, and he relished the idea of leading it.
He was letting me put a lot of input into the build of the store. And then when the store opened, said, you know what, I want you to be the guy to run it. It made me feel important to the company at that point, and I got to thank George for that.
When multiple companies have branched out from Grand West, that was because of very prudent spending, and I think George was taught at an early age that it isn't how much money you make, it's how much money you spend.
Then we have FB Financial, which is a lending company. It lends primarily to developers and construction companies that are building housing very often, and so we finance them.
George's lending business really is a solid concept. Lending finances to developers means that there is always fixed asset collateral. The business is still growing, but worth a healthy $30 million.
What I feel is to be a trustworthy person is a hallmark or one of the ingredients you need to grow. If you can work with people and they trust you, you can galvanize a whole army to defend your country or to build a company.
The people that we have and the atmosphere that's been created from George early on, people have adopted that because they enjoy it. It's not just coming to work, it's coming to work with your friends.
My wife sometimes asks the question, do you love your staff more than you love your family? And of course I love my family, but I think a lot of our staff, of our people. And I think they all feel that we're there to build something. And when we do, we're all winners.
How is Reddy doing? I know we're great on industrial. Retail is reasonable. Our office is lagging. And I suppose we could say retail is also suffering downtown to some extent. What can we do? How can we fix this?
Downtown is like a war zone right now. 25% vacancy across the board. Companies have figured out they can make do with less space. What we really need to do is figure out some sort of strategy where we can be competitive in the market. Why are people going to come to our properties and not other people's?
If they knew our team the way I know our team, that's one reason they would come.
Definitely, definitely. One thought that I had with this building is using the floors, which are about 10,000 square feet, and having them as flex spaces so that we could cut it up as people wanted and use the smaller spaces. As,
yes.
Like we said before, people are using less space.
Micro spaces.
It's something that might work.
It took me 2 years to convince my mother that I should have a motorbike. She wasn't fond of them, but when I was 14, I got my first bike. I just fell for it. I loved it. And then I bought another bike, a bigger bike. And I'd ride it for a while and sell it. And I made a couple $100 on that, which was big money in those days.
George, when he was younger, already found it quite enjoyable to buy and sell. And of course, he was already buying motorcycles because that was his passion, that was his love.
There was a boy, he was a grade or two ahead of me. He wanted to buy a bike, so I went with him to shop. I could point out some scratches or this or that, and we could perhaps get a little better deal. And so he ended up having to throw in the helmet and his leather jacket. Then my friend, when it was getting close to it, I pulled him aside and I said, it's a go, but would you mind if I took the jacket? I said, I think it fits me better than you anyway. So that's what happened. So that was my commission for getting him a bike.
He's had the old cars for as long as I can remember, and he's kind of collected them over the years and added to them. And then once a year, Dad in the summertime will get them up and running, drive them around the yard and park them again. And that's all they get used.
Or sometimes we go to cruise night.
Occasionally,
Yeah.
but not the really collectible ones, because the more kilometers on those, the value is lost.
What happened to him is he started collecting properties instead of cars. And the interest in buildings and construction took over.
And then Michael, he had finished university. He wanted to come and work with us. So where would he fit into Grand West? We have people that have been there 20, 30 years. And so to have Michael come in, where does he fit? Reddy didn't have anybody. And so he could work there on properties. And he propelled it. He was a mover and a shaker.
I wonder if any of them would appreciate street side. And that could be where CAA used to be. And Lululemon, those are like right street side, so it might be easier for their clients to get to them. Do you know if this is light duty pavement, or did they pour it heavy?
This is heavy duty pavement already. The tenant on this side has the large trucks coming in, so we had to make this heavy duty here.
4 years ago, we decided to do an expansion to expand to Montreal. Right now, we're doing a 4-story just outside downtown Montreal. And when it's completed, we'll have a view of the entire downtown skyline of Montreal.
I feel he demonstrated to the rest of the team he wasn't scared of work. And I think he gained respect with them.
As you can see, we're just fitting this out for the new tenant coming in here. With the new mezzanine, we've had to fire rate double 5/8 drywall, which was a heck of a job.
Structural mezzanine?
Structural mezzanine, yeah. We have the full structural wall that runs all the way down here.
Michael definitely has all of the capabilities, and with his role that he's taken on with Reddy Properties, he's learned the business and has earned the respect of people, which is huge.
Do you know how many people they're planning on having work here?
About 15, but yeah, we're well on the way here, looking for an October 1 move-in.
Okay. I think Dad has difficulty separating family from business. Often, yeah, I'll be trying to be professional and have, a collared shirt on and, quite business-like, but Dad would call my office and, it would immediately come through the microphone and he'd be, "Hey, monkey, are you there?" And the people in my office would kind of laugh and I'd, get a little bit flustered and red in the face and be like, yeah, Dad, I'll be there in a minute. I'm just in a meeting." So I'd be sitting there like completely embarrassed with all these business people around. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing?
I have to laugh sometimes. So after 42 years, when I said I was going to step down as CEO, they were, some were aghast and they said, "I never saw that coming." Yeah, so sitting in this room reminds me when I made the announcement here a few months ago that I'm stepping down as CEO. So I understand there were a few tears when I made the comment. The part that was left out is they were tears of joy. So.
Well, I know George enjoys business, and after I left, he continued on and expanded the business to what it is today. It's a great business. I know he enjoys doing it. I was surprised to see him step back from the business. I thought he might just stay there till I don't know when.
We have Randy Clausen that's taken over as CEO of Grand West.
As far as staffing, has Isaac come to you with a request for any more?
I'm the chairman, but Randy runs the general operations.
I don't want to be a beneficiary of nepotism. The best leaders don't climb to the top, they're carried to the top. And I think that Randy is definitely one of those cases where he's been carried to the top and he's earned his colleagues' trust.
So then Mark would do that from his perspective.
Yes.
Well, those are big boots. George has a reputation that has permeated throughout the company.
George's legacy will always be, again, back to who he was, his character. And day in and day out, he's shown us how to work ethic. He's shown us attitude. He's shown us passion. He's shown us fire, shown us knowledge, wisdom. And if all of those things are put together on a daily basis, that's his legacy. The man, the negotiator.
When you're dealing with the other party, hear them out and ask them questions and see where they're coming from and understand why they have the position they do. And you show a little empathy and you show a little sacrifice, they'll also consider your viewpoint.
His connection to a person is like, less than a second. So business is connecting to people.
I subscribe to win-win because there are no losers, and you can take a conflict and build it into something that was stronger than it was before. Change can always be exciting, and when we can do things and we say, wow, this is a new frontier, and if you can be successful at it, what's not to like?
Hello, George here.
If you're driving across the Rockies and you come to a roadblock, most people stop and they turn back. But if there was $1 million waiting for you in Vancouver and you're at the Crow's Nest Pass, some guys would climb the rocks and they'd get over top. They'd hitchhike, they'd get on a canoe, they'd go down Fraser River. They would get there to collect that $1 million.
And that's what we're all trying to do in business, is collect that $1 million.
He thinks he can get everything done in like a very short amount of time, so like there's no limit to what can be done in a day.
He does not have a clock. He doesn't watch a clock.
As far as his time management, yeah, he is known for being late on occasion when we arrange him.
Okay, I've got to stop you there.
Okay.
Late on occasion. You be diplomatic here.
So when we moved to Montreal, we had some people come and visit, and they were looking for the owner, and they couldn't find him because he was down in the sump pit fixing the sewer system.
We could say frugal. Yeah, we could say tight.
He has spent half an hour on many lunches asking me where do I buy my gas.
But all due respect, I mean, he's rich.
He's trying to convince me to go buy my gas at Superstore because when you consider the coupon that they give you, that's the best place in the city to buy your gas.
We'd get to go on family vacations, but of course my dad had to make it an experience.
We would land on the charter flight, cheapest flight we could, and we'd get there, we had no hotel.
And Dad would go from hotel to hotel to hotel to find the best deal.
Well, we got to explore. We got to find a place. And there's always a place to sleep. The homeless people know where to go.
We stayed in Las Vegas, in the crummiest place I have ever stayed in my life. And I've stayed in some pretty bad places.
Yeah, and I think it was like a sense of adventure too. Like he liked landing in Mexico and not knowing where we're gonna stay that night.
I remember sleeping on the rooftop of a hotel, totally full on a New Year's Eve. And it had a thatched roof and it was half blown away, and it was an experience. We remember that more than staying in a 5-star hotel. But there are times he said, "Dad, you're being a little cheap." There's no question.